Would you believe this is going to be episode 77 of According to Callus? Welcome. Tonight, I am doing hashtag winning night with my winning shirt. Yes, we're going to be discussing briefly the weekly update that Ron Paul Liberty Report gave, the lessons of Waco. Now, that was put out this last Monday, and that's referencing the April 19th events, right? The reason why this is relevant is the current administration wants to put the guy that was in charge of something back then and was enthusiastic about what they did in Waco in charge. And that just spells a recipe for disaster. To hear more, join me on the podcast. Well, folks, if you aren't worried, you ought to be just a little bit at unease. The guy that they're looking to put in charge of the ATF, aside from being a bureaucrat, is quite frankly not a good man. He does not want you to be exercising your God-given constitutionally protected rights. In fact, he would like us all disarmed. If he could have his way, I imagine that we would all be arrested because, after all, he has said that an armed citizen is just a criminal waiting to happen. And, of course, I am paraphrasing. I don't bother to directly quote people that, one, I don't care about, two, are quite frankly I'm not a fan of them, and three, I have zero desire for them to ever be successful. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he's going to be going anywhere fast. Even though there's a 50-50 split in the Senate, it only takes 50 plus 1 to get that knucklehead appointed. And honestly, I don't understand why that would be something we would be happy about. So again, take 5 minutes of your time. Go listen to the episode from Monday, June 14th, The Lessons of Waco, on the Ron Paul Liberty Report weekly update. He kind of relates what happened and why it's so shameful and disgusting that they massacred 76 men, women, and children. And they all got away with it. Some got promoted. But why? Interesting. The great Dr. Paul does give some additional detail, does give some better understanding of what went on there. And honestly, I only knew part of the other side of that. I'm fairly well versed of what happened down there. I did watch several videos and read a couple of very long articles, exposés, if you will, on that situation. And how it is that that was tolerated, how that was that it was accepted and that was somehow permissible is beyond me. Now, yeah, maybe David Koresh was a bad guy. In fact, I'll give you that. Let's say he was the second most evil man since Jim Jones. But people weren't dying on his compound. They weren't going around marauding, stealing from people. And even though they were allegedly having, let's say, shameful interactions with children, or let's say underaged people, because that was never proven. It's kind of hard to prove when they're all dead. But nevertheless, then it was they were making drugs and trafficking drugs. They dreamed up everything they could to give an excuse why they would use military-style weaponry to invade. Yet, these are the same folks that don't want you and me to have access to military-looking equipment. Now, I'm sorry, but I would fear the government that would fear an armed populace. I don't trust my government. I don't love my government, but I do love my country. And it's just shameful to me that we continue to accept the same story over and over again. It's for your own safety. We know what's best for you. Don't worry about this, good citizen. We have this all under control. Just go back to sleep. Big Daddy government's got this. Again, I'm at a loss. I don't know why we find this acceptable. I don't know why we tolerate it, yet we do. Year after year after year. And my Republican friends, they just think if they will just vote the next best guy in, it'll fix everything. At this point, I really think it's just vote all the bums out. maybe you take a chance and you put a Democrat in office for a term just to get rid of that bad Republican because everybody's afraid to try and primary him. In my home county, in my opinion, I would say we have 4 weak individuals representing us. That's not necessarily an insult. It just means that they could be better. They could be stronger. They're good Republicans. But we could do better. But the fact of the matter is they're fairly popular. They're fairly well known. They have plenty of money in the bank. And all the right people support them. So everybody's afraid to challenge the status quo, afraid to, I believe the phrase is, remove the dead wood. So if we can't deal with our own elected officials that disappoint us year after year after year, and then tell us we just have to suck it up because we can't have a Democrat, I really don't hold a lot of faith that the federal government's ever going to rein itself in, that they're ever going to punish their own bad actors, whether they're in the FBI or the ATF or the BLM or the EPA. There's so much abuse by federal bureaucrats that we just tolerate and we look past and we just ignore it. Why? Why do we accept this? Now, I'm not suggesting that we need to relive what happened in April 19th of, I think it was 1993. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. I'm not suggesting that in any way, shape, or form that these are good ideas. And certainly the so-called insurrection of January 6th, I mean, those are foolish things. You're being manipulated to make bad decisions if you think that's going to fix anything. Just say no. Just fail to comply. Peaceful non-compliance will work. Yeah, some of us might get hurt. Some of us might lose a job. Some of us might end up spending the night in jail. But laws that aren't enforced are not laws at all. And the more laws they give, the more difficult it becomes to enforce them all. Now, we're living in a soft totalitarian regime right now. We have been for quite some time. And we all tend to just suck it up and grin and bear it when our guy's in charge in D.C. But the boots keep marching forward, and they get closer and closer. And if we don't do something to reel that back in or to turn it away, I hate to see what it is our kids are going to be stuck with. I hate to see what it's going to be like when my children are my age. Will there even be a country worth defending at that point? Yes, there will be. The country's always worth defending. It's the government that needs to go. It's the government that failed. If you took an oath, remember your oath. You swore that oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And if you look with open eyes and an open mind, you can't help but conclude something ain't right. The enemy is among us. The enemy is running D.C. Bloodshed's not going to fix this. But there are other ways. Whether it's replacement or just non-compliance. That is our only play that doesn't end up with a bunch of dead bodies. No more Wacos. No more silly, quote-unquote, insurrections. We can fix this starting at the local level. As Brian McClanahan says, think local, act local. The great Ron Paul did his part. He brought as many people to be aware of liberty as he could. He spoke forcefully and directly, never wavering. In the face of immense opposition, he held the line. And he may have went down in defeat in everything except his own election, but he stood as a beacon, and I only hope to be 1/10 as successful at doing that as he was, or is, since he is still with us. With that, my friends, I'm going to end this episode a little early. It's about 10 minutes. I hope it was worth your time. This is kicking off a Friday. Have a good weekend. Love your kids. Love your wife. Enjoy your family. With that, this is According to Callus, and I will see you on the other side.